Hi everyone, Megan Gauer here with Calvin Wetzel from our Her Hoop Stats team, and we are super excited because somehow Thanksgiving is already basically here, which means it's time for the most exciting week for at least the beginning of the women's college basketball season. It's Thanksgiving tournament time. So lots of really big tournaments going on over the next week or so, especially in some fun locations. So I'm envious of any of you that are actually sitting on the beach right now, ready to watch some basketball. We're going to be doing a series of previews to kind of highlight some of these bigger tournaments that are coming up over the next few weeks. A lot of top teams in action. And to start that out, we're going to start with the Battle for Atlantis, which tips off this Saturday, November 20th through Monday on the 22nd. 4 ranked teams in this tournament. So every game in the opening round features a ranked team. Number 1, South Carolina, number 2, UConn, number 9, Oregon, and number 23, South Florida, all in this tournament, along with Syracuse, Minnesota, Oklahoma, and Buffalo. So Calvin, who are you picking to win this one overall?
I'm going to go with South Carolina. I also picked them to win the national championship, early on in our preseason pods. So I got to stick with them, assuming we do get the South Carolina-UConn matchup. The first of what could be 3 matchups this year. There's one on the schedule already. Hopefully, one in the Final Four, maybe the championship in March. So if we do see these 2 teams meet up in the championship of this tournament, what I'm looking at as some of the keys why I'm picking South Carolina. Number 1, they're shooting the ball really well. That's been sort of a question mark for them the last couple of years. Destiny Henderson, Bria Beal is starting to shoot well. They're combined 10 for 16 from 3 through their first 3 games. Last season in this matchup, South Carolina lost to UConn. They only made 1 3 all game. It was still obviously a very close game. So I'm looking at that. And the other thing I'm looking at is rim protection. Obviously, UConn is deep in the front court as well. And you talk about Aliyah Nelson-Ododa as a really big time shot blocker. Dorka Juhas, Aliyah Edwards, they're solid. I don't consider them elite rim protectors. To me, South Carolina has 4 elite rim protectors, the best quartet really that I've ever seen, I think, in terms of shot blocking in Amihir, Aliyah Boston, Victoria Saxton, and Camila Cardoso. You have basically 2 shot blockers on the court at any given time among those 4. So I'm looking at those as maybe the 2, it's splitting hairs, honestly, to me, with these 2 teams. There's not very much, I think, that separates them. But if you had to point to 2 areas that I think maybe can get South Carolina an edge, those are the two spots that I'm looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with my predictable answer of picking UConn to win this, but I will say I've been kind of basically flip-flopping back and forth on who I think will win this game every day over the last week or so, just from watching the 2 teams play. I mean, UConn in their opening matchup obviously had a huge offensive night, but defensively was not their best outing. And then South Carolina has looked good, obviously picked up that big win over NC State early on, but the turnovers there are just starting to concern me. I think that's something they're going to have to clean up to win this game because UConn loves to get out in transition. And if you're going to turn the ball over, you're probably going to give the Huskies just a few too many chances to run the floor, which is going to get them going. I'm also picking UConn for, the Paige Bueckers effect. Her just like we saw it in their opener against Arkansas, 34 points, career high in her sophomore debut. Her ability to just take over the game, I think it's going to be a close one. So if you're looking for a player on the floor that's going to be able to hit that clutch shot and finish the game out, I'm going to go with Paige Bueckers.
And she did so in that matchup last year. Yes. Do I remember correctly? Was that the matchup where she got that crazy friendly bounce off the rim when they were up 1 and it basically put the game away? That was against South Carolina, right?
Yes, it was. And in case anyone was wondering, that obviously has made it into the UConn before game highlight reel that's played. I think it's going to be a close one either way, though. Like you said, it's splitting hairs. You've got 2 really, really solid teams that hopefully we are going to see against each other 3 times this season. So I think it's going to be an exciting game, regardless of who comes out on top.
That I think as soon as the bracket for this tournament for Battle for Atlantis came out, that I think a bunch of people sort of circled on their calendars. With all due respect to the other 6 teams who could prevent this matchup from happening.
Exactly. I mean, it is like a week for upsets as well, usually. So who knows? But that is the one I'm circling the most. That's supposed to be noon on ESPN on Monday. So a bit unfortunate that we've got a noon game on a Monday, but it is on ESPN. So that's exciting. So obviously that's the big marquee matchup that people are hoping to get out of this tournament. But like we said, still 4 ranked teams. What are some of the other matchups that you're kind of circling?
I really like this Oklahoma versus Oregon matchup. Oregon, top 10 team, obviously, but dealt with some injuries early. They're hoping to get, according to Kelly Graves, Nyara Sabally back for this tournament. Tahina Paopao came back in the last game, only played 2.5 minutes. So they're hoping to have her and a little bit more available, I think, for this tournament as well. Oklahoma, meanwhile, has had a really strong start. Jenny Baranchek, who I'm very familiar with from the Missouri Valley, came over from Drake after building a great program there. Started out 3-0 at Oklahoma, including a big-time road win at South Dakota. She is looking to go 4-0. This will be her first chance to play a ranked team. I think this is going to be a very interesting matchup to watch early on. Out of those 4 in the first round, I'm circling this one.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that is probably the most intriguing game in the first round, especially with those Oregon players coming back from injury. I think the other one that I'm kind of looking at is that Syracuse USF game. It's one of your first chances to see this Syracuse team that looks worlds different than it did last year against a top 25 opponent. And also interested to see how USF rebounds from that loss at Tennessee earlier this week as well. So I think that's probably the other key one. All right. So if we move on to the next round after that first round, it sounded like you had something you were excited to talk about there.
I really hope that we get a Buffalo versus Syracuse matchup in this tournament for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, I lived in Rochester, New York for a few years, right in between Buffalo and Syracuse. Everyone is all about Syracuse there, obviously, because it's the Power 5 program. Buffalo knows that, though. And in every sport, Buffalo is a little bit annoyed by that. A couple years ago, I don't know if you remember this, when Buffalo was really good on the men's side, they got a 6th seed in the tournament. They went into the Carrier Dome and beat Syracuse, and that was a really, really big deal for them. I think if Buffalo gets a chance to get their shot at Syracuse here in this bracket on the women's side, I actually think Buffalo might come away with a win. Her hoop stats ratings don't mean anything this early in the year, but if you're into that, Buffalo is ranked 19th right now on the strength of their 60-point win over Canisius. Again, doesn't mean very much. I don't think they're a top 20 team, but I do think, with all the struggles we've talked about Syracuse over the last several months that are well documented, totally different team, clearly not peak Syracuse that we're used to. Buffalo, meanwhile, Deja Fair, obviously on the Hammond Award watch list again. They get basically everyone back from already, a really solid mid-major team. I'm looking at the Western New York regional battle, a lot of bragging rights on the line. And if that game happens, I'm going with Buffalo to secure the Western New York State Championship.
I think obviously though the two games on the winner side of the bracket that we're kind of expecting to see, I would say we're expecting to see South Carolina versus Oregon. So that's a top 10 matchup there. Like we said, Oregon dealing with some injuries. So I don't think we're going to see a full strength total Oregon against South Carolina, but I still think that's a good matchup. Another good task for South Carolina, who's just played a pretty insane schedule to start off.
I like that UConn USF matchup though in that round. If we do get there, a little bit of a throwback a couple of years to the American Conference. Obviously, USF was always sort of second fiddle. They've been better the last couple of years, and it's not just because they've been able to pick up more wins without having to play UConn twice. They've legitimately been, last year they won a tournament game. They were 19-4. They're ranked now to get everyone back from that team. They've been playing really well early on. Sydney Harvey is shooting fantastic. She's over 50% from deep. They were a couple minutes away from going into Tennessee and stealing a win there from a top 15 team. So USF is, I don't think they're going to beat UConn. I'm definitely not going to pick that. But I do think it's the type of squad that has the experience, obviously a little bit of a chip, not being able to beat UConn all those years in the conference, and the talent to maybe hang with UConn for a while. I could see this being single digits, at least in the second half, maybe before UConn sort of pulls away in the fourth quarter. Especially the way that USF loves to grind out those slow defensive sort of games makes it a little bit harder for the opponent to really pull away as well. So I don't necessarily think that UConn's going to just jump on them from the start. I think this could be a good game into the second half at least.
I also think this one is interesting because they're another kind of smaller team like what UConn played in Arkansas. They don't have a ton of size inside. UConn should have the advantage there, but we saw in that Arkansas game, they didn't really use that advantage all that well. One thing that Gino Auriemma commented on after the game was that it was a tough match for their big guys because they didn't have a lot of size inside, and there was a little bit of confusion in terms of like a lot of the offense running from outside of the arc and where should they be. So I'm interested to see too if they can make a defensive adjustment to kind of adapt to this game and also then keep their big guys on the floor and take advantage of that size advantage. Battle for Atlantis starts Saturday. First 2 rounds are on Flow Hoops. You do have to have a subscription for that, but as you'll see as we go through the series, lots of games coming up on that, so probably something worth considering. And championship game on ESPN on Monday, definitely one to be circling. Hope you guys all enjoy the Turkey Week basketball.